Oh man, it's good to be back. If you're new here, my name is Chris, and we all work for Matt Kelly during the week. And something happened 2 years ago this weekend. 2 years ago, I stood up on stage after moving everything across country. Stood up here on stage, preached my very first sermon, and 2 years ago, you and I started what I believe has been one of the most fun, most incredible journeys that I have been on. So thank you so much for that. And whether you were here since the past 2 years or you've joined that journey anytime in the past 2 years, I'm so fired up that you're here. And we just got a lot of fun and exciting things that we'll be rolling out in the next 4 to 6 weeks here at Mountain Lake. What's going on, how you can be a part of it, what God is doing, and some really fun things that are happening. But today I just wanted to start at the beginning because see, a lot of things have changed over the past 2 years. And so my little 2-month-old that he was when we moved here, he's now a 2-year-old, and he's walking and talking up a storm. We own way more Georgia Bulldog gear than I ever thought I would ever own, ever. Which is not saying much. I owned 0 coming to this state, and so now we own a hat. And I'm a proud owner of 6 ducks. It's a long story, but that's just that's what God does in my life. And so things have changed, and things here at the church have changed, but the heartbeat of what we do, of what we're trying to accomplish week in and week out hasn't changed. And so we're going to talk about that today. And if this is your first time here, like, honestly, you could not have picked a better Sunday to show up, check it out, visit, because it's essentially like getting to know the person on the very first date, which never, ever happens, all right? So some of you, it's been a while since you've been on a first date. Let me remind you, it's fake. It's what you see in that person. It's not real. It's not really who it is. And so, but today, we're going to lay all the cards on the table. You're going to get to know the mission, the vision, the values, the heartbeat, how God has wired me and to lead this church. And so if you've been to one of what we call our newcomers dinners, this is going to sound familiar. But if you haven't been, if you're going, man, I've always wanted to go to one of those dinners but never had a Wednesday off, consider this a part of it. And if you're going, man, I've always wanted to be a part of the church, if you're from a denominational background, maybe you say, I've always wanted to be a member of the church, maybe go to the membership class. We call it something different here. We call it becoming a part of the family. Because personally, when I think membership, I think Costco, Netflix, and Dollar Shave Club, which I'm a member of all three. And I pay money to those companies, and I expect certain things in return. Like I have certain rights that I want to happen, and the instant they don't deliver, then I stop paying. But I'm also a dad, and I'm also a husband, and that doesn't change no matter what. And I have responsibilities as a family member, not a right. And so if you're a newlywed dude, do not tell your spouse, it's my right to watch College Game Day. Doesn't go over well, all right? So just free marriage tip for you. But anyway, responsibility. So it's becoming a part of the family. So we like to think of Mountain Lake as a family. And I want you just as your friend and as your pastor to be a part of a local church, a local body of believers, and make sure whatever church you become a part of does 2 things, and they always do these 2 things. Make sure that they preach Jesus. They preach about Jesus. They're trying to get people to Jesus, and make sure that they love people. Get involved in a Jesus-preaching, people-loving church, and all the other details would take care of themselves. And so we live in the greater Atlanta area. There are tons of unbelievable churches here in this area. And in fact, there's a bunch of unbelievable churches literally a stone's throw away from where you're sitting today. And so let me just give you a list of some really great churches here in this area. There's Brownsbridge Community Church. There's First Redeemer. There's North Point. There's First Baptist Cumming. And there's Oak Grove Baptist. And the reason I list those is because I know all the senior pastors there. And all of those churches, they do those 2 things. They preach Jesus and they love people, but they do it in their own unique ways with their own flavors. And so whether it's here at Mountain Lake or any of those churches or any other church in Atlanta, make sure they preach Jesus, make sure they love people, and then they're going to do that, they're going to express that in their own unique way. And so today you get to hear how we at Mountain Lake, how we preach Jesus and how we love people, but we do it in our own unique way with our mission and vision and values. And then after hearing all of this, you're going, man, I want to become a part of the family, but I don't have time to go to that dinner, stuck in your worship guide, there's an extra handout. You can just fill that out and let us know, drop it in the offering box, and this is becoming a part of the family. So I put myself in your shoes this week, and I thought, if I'm in your seat and I'm checking the church out, or maybe I've been here for a while, I really want to know two things about the church. I want to know who are you, Chris? Like what kind of makes you tick? What drives you? And then what is this church all about? Who are you and what is this church about? So let me just give you my story, my history, and then some verses that have really shaped personally the way I do ministry and the way I lead, and then how it impacts this church. Now, I'm a preacher's kid. My dad retired after 40 years in ministry, so I've known nothing but growing up in the local church, from little bitty to really big and everywhere in between. And love the local church. I've always been a part of a local church, but never wanted to work in it. Never wanted to work in it. I was shy, introverted, and barely passed speech in high school, which is not the combination you want to have when you want to go into preaching. And so I'm sure when I told the Lord, hey, I want to go into preaching, the angels are going, oh, Lord, anybody but Emmitt. So, but that's me. I'm shy, I'm introverted, I've gotten a little bit better on stage, but I didn't want anything to do with church. I wanted to go the opposite route, and I did the whole entrepreneur thing starting when I was 19 years old. My grandfather took me under his wing and just said, hey, I know you're interested in business and entrepreneurship, and so here's what this looks like. And so since I was 19, I started putting deals together and building construction projects and real estate deals. And my grandfather honestly taught me how to have the eye of a developer and to see something of little value and to see what you could do to it to make it of great value. And so the very first part of my career was spent doing that. Worked for my grandfather through college, went out, did my own thing, and was loving life. Was always involved or served in whatever area or town I lived in that local church. But, it was good for my dad, but it was not for me. And so I went out, did my own thing, and was loving life, was living in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, met Brianna. We got married, lived up there for a couple of years. I had some business going down in the San Antonio, Austin area. We moved down there, was involved in my dad's church, and life was great. We had Daniel, our firstborn, at that time, and I was working and all that kind of stuff. And then I came home to Brianna, and I told her this. I said, I'm not sure I can do this for the rest of my life. To which she's a great wife. She goes, okay, sweetie, what do you want to do? And I go, I don't know. I just don't want to do this. Now, if you're a husband, you're newlywed, probably don't want to say that to you. Well, you want to have a plan, all right? I mean, we had a firstborn. I don't know, but I don't think I want to do this. And she goes, well, let's pray about it. She blames God, all right? So we'll just let God handle your issues, Chris. So we'll pray about it. And so I could come next week, babe, I'm just not sure this is me. And she came and she goes, how about this? She goes, why don't you start teaching a Sunday school class here at your dad's church and see if that scratches that itch of needing something extra or some kind of purpose in your life. And I was like, I've never done that before. And she goes, well, let's just try it. So we went there, we started a Sunday school class. I met at Sunday mornings at 11 o'clock in this room, and all of a sudden, like 60 to 70 young adults and newlyweds were showing up, and I was like, what is going on here? And they'd show up every Sunday, and I'd teach them the best I could, and we'd have small group discussions, and started doing that, and all of a sudden told Brianna, I was like, I don't really know what I'm doing, so I better figure this out, and just for the fun of it, I enrolled myself into seminary, because that's what you do when you're bored. And so I was like, I better go to seminary, and she's like, oh, okay. So I found a seminary that I could go online at night, and so I would work and raise Daniel and teach and go to seminary, and so did that for about a year and a half, and it was so much fun. It was right when everyone was having their first kid and taking meals to the hospitals, and I just told Brianna, I was like, this is way more fun than what I do during the week, but I don't get paid for what I do on Sunday. I'm a volunteer, and so about a year and a half, I can tell you, and I can take you to the exact spot in Texas where my call into ministry happened. Now, for many preachers, their call into ministry, the way they describe it is unbelievable. Like, you could almost hear like angels singing and a light beam down, and God said, you're going into ministry. And they had this moment. Let me tell you how God spoke to me. It was 6:30 in the morning at a gas station in the middle of nowhere, Texas. I had filled up with gas. I had pulled out. I was getting on a Highway 281 heading to the job site that morning. And literally out of nowhere, the thought of, what about ministry for a career? Thought about it, drove to the site, didn't think much about it, came back home, told Brianna, said, hey, what about, selling out everything and going into church work, for a living? And again, you got to understand, Brianna is a, gift from God. She goes, oh, okay, well, let's pray about that too. And I was like, yeah, I'd sell it all. Let's go to work for church. She goes, well, why don't you talk to your dad about it, right? Dad's been in ministry for his whole life. Why don't you talk to him? And other than me and Brianna, my dad and I, we're best friends. Golf, hunt, fish, hang out together. So I called my dad. I was like, hey, Dad. He's like, yeah. I said, hey, I'm thinking about going in ministry. What do you think? And this is my dad. Other than Brianna, it's just like, he walked on the moon as far as I'm concerned. I go, hey, I'm thinking about going to ministry. What do you think? And his response was, I'm not going to talk about that with you. Well, yeah, I didn't want to talk about it either. Whatever, we're not talking about that. And I was like, what? He goes, we're not talking about that. And it was really confused. And about a week or two later, and I'd bring it back up. Hey, Dad, what do you think about me going into ministry? We're not going to talk about that, son. That went on for 6 months. Super frustrating, very, very confusing. But looking back, it was the best thing he could have done. Because I had to get on my knees before Jesus and with Brianna and go, is this right for me and my family, or is it because my dad is in the ministry? And so 6 months of prayer and asking the Lord, is this right, isn't this right, is this right, isn't this right? And Brianna are getting down on our knees. We finally made the decision to sell out everything in the business and get out of that. And I got hired on at my dad's church with no help from him. I mean, there was no recommendation letter. I got hired on as a part-time young adult small group director. I mean, it's right there, just kind of bottom of the ladder. But I got hired on, and then I had to work 2 and 3 jobs to make ends meet. But all of a sudden, I was loving life. And at that moment, when I got hired on, that's when it changed between my dad and I. Because he saw it was for real. He saw it wasn't just something I was kicking the tires on. He saw I sold out everything, came on and said, Lord, I'm ready to serve you through ministry. And at that moment, that's when my dad said, here's how you pastor. And I got to kind of sit by his side for the next 7 years and get in meetings that a 20-something should never be sitting in, and see leadership at a high level and pastorship at an unbelievable level. And I got to see my dad just walk people through things, and got to see the heart of a pastor and a shepherd, and was there for 7 years working for my dad. And by the time at the very end of those 7 years, it was essentially 2 churches under one roof. And what had happened is we had 2 auditoriums there. There was a 3,000-seat auditorium and a 1,000-seat auditorium. My dad was in the 3,000, I was in the 1,000. We were literally separated by a 50-foot hallway. So it was one roof, 2 churches. He had his own music. I had my own music. He had his own childcare. I had my own childcare. And it was fun. Probably not the healthiest church model that you want to adopt, but it was fun. And so, he'd go, well, there's your room. Whatever you want to do, Chris, just reach people for Jesus. And I was like, oh my goodness, okay. So we started doing this, and it would have been nice. People talked about, well, why didn't you take over for your dad? Or did you ever want to take over for your dad? That would have been great, if he rode out and you took over. And, those conversations happened, to be real candid with you. But the Lord made it very, very clear that was not his plan for my life and for that church. Great church, loved the 7 years I was there, but it just wasn't what God had in plan. And so my dad and I had long conversations. And I just told him, hey, this is not going to work. And he goes, I get it. And I said, hey, if an opportunity comes available, I'm going to take it. And he goes, Chris, you've got my blessing. And so for the next year or so, just been praying. And if you're in the business world, you have search firms, you have headhunters that take one employee from one company to another. Churches do the same. There's search firms, headhunters, and one called and said, hey, there's this church in the North Atlanta area. Would you be interested in talking about it? And I said, sure. So I flew out here by myself. A few days later, I bring Brianna, and at that time, our 2-week-old Micah with us. And from that moment to the moment we moved into our rental house was 8-week process. I mean, it was fast. It was just, we're out here. 8 weeks later, we had sold a house, packed up everything, and we were rolling into town end of September, transition, and then preached my very first sermon the first week in October. And I'm here to tell you, and I said this before, but I really, it's not preacher rhetoric. You need to understand that next to making Jesus my Lord and Savior, asking Brianna to marry me, and having kids, Mountain Lake Church is the best decision I've ever made. It is. You're an unbelievable. And so I tell you that because that's my background into ministry. You know, I didn't grow up, you know, son, you're going to be a preacher when you get older. It just wasn't that. It was, so I hung out with general contractors and subcontractors and architects and engineers. And that's my background. And that's the perspective I bring to ministry and to church work. And so today I just want to share with you some verses that have really shaped me personally, the way I view ministry and really how this church is led. And so if you've got a Bible, go to Matthew chapter 9. We're going to pick it up in verse 9. And I just want to read through it and tell you why this is so near and dear to my heart and how it affects all of us as Mountain Lake. Matthew chapter 9, starting in verse 9, and here's what it says. It says, as Jesus was walking along, he saw a man named Matthew sitting in his tax collector's booth. Follow me and be my disciple, Jesus said to him. So Matthew got up and followed him. And later, Matthew invited Jesus and his disciples to his home as dinner guests, along with many tax collectors and other disreputable sinners. But when the Pharisees saw this, they asked his disciples, why does your teacher eat with such scum? When Jesus heard this, he said, healthy people don't need a doctor, sick people do. Then he added, now go and learn the meaning of this scripture. I want you to show mercy, not offer sacrifices. For I have come to call not those who think they are righteous, but those who know they are sinners. And I love this passage because Jesus asking Matthew to be one of his disciples and then going to this dinner party where there were notorious sinners, where others described them as scum. The way Jesus reached out to Matthew is going, man, that's what my heart beats for. My heart beats for those people that probably aren't very comfortable stepping foot in church. And so what I've told people is this, go, listen, if you're not real comfortable in church, if you're a little rough around the edges, and if you're skeptical of preachers, you and I would be great friends. We'd be great friends. That the people that Matthew hung out with, the people that he invited Jesus to see, that was my background. And going, man, that's the world that I come from. So I'm going, well, Jesus should be for everyone, not just for all of us sitting here in this room, but for the entire world, those that know how to do church and those that don't want to step foot in church. And so if you're rough around the edges, if you're skeptical of preachers, I promise you and I would be really, really great friends. And the reason I know this is there's a guy who's involved in our church. And his first day here at Mountain Lake was my very first day. He said, well, I heard they got a new preacher, so I thought I'd check it out. And he goes, I've been here for 2 years. He and I are dear friends to this day. But you need to know when he first came here, about 3 or 4 months into it, he invited me to play in a charity golf tournament. He goes, hey, I got to play in a charity golf tournament. Do you want to play with me? And I was like, yeah, sure. So we showed up, and for like the first 4 or 5 holes, he was acting weird. Just strange. And I've told him this. So you go, what? I told him. I said, you just acted weird, man. And about after hole 5 or 6, I just call it out. I was like, is everything okay? I said, you're acting weird, kind of strange. And he goes, man, Chris, he goes, I got to be honest with you. Sometimes when I play golf, if I hit a bad shot, I curse. Like, okay. And he goes, I'm wanting to, but I don't want to offend you. And so I was like, and I paused, and I don't know why I asked him this. I go, what are your favorite curse words to say? Curious, I'm a curious guy. And so he told me a few of the words that were his favorite. And I was like, oh, okay. I was like, well, I'm a big boy. I can handle it. He goes, are you sure? And I was like, yeah, man, I'm fine with that. All of a sudden, his golf game went like through the roof. Unbelievable. And I actually talked to him last night. We were talking about some things. And I said, hey, I'm using you in a sermon tomorrow. He's like, oh, no. I was like, don't worry, you're anonymous. He's like, oh, okay, say what you want to say. So But it's people like that I've hung out with, that I relate with, and that shapes this ministry and the way this church is being led. And so you need to know our mission and our vision and our values. And if you're in business world, you've heard mission statement, you've heard vision statement, and honestly, they can get a bit confusing. So let me just put it into our words when we think mission and vision and values. So for us, the mission statement is why. Right? It's why we exist as a church, why we do what we do. Our vision statement is what we're doing, what we're trying to do every single week. And our value statements are how we're doing that, how we're living that out in our life. So it's the why, and then it's the what, and then it's the how. And so here's our mission statement of Mountain Lake Church. And it's very simply this: to lead people to fully follow Jesus. This is why we exist, to lead people to fully follow Jesus. And why I love this passage here in Matthew is because when Jesus calls Matthew to follow him, it was a big deal. Matthew was all in. See, the disciples that were fishermen, if the whole following Jesus thing didn't work out for them, they could go back and make a living. They could go back to what they do. But when Matthew followed Jesus, he gave up everything. His tax collectors, they had already forsaken their Jewish countrymen, right, extorting taxes from them, so they were hated by Jews. And now that he's leaving his tax collector position, now he's snubbing Rome. And so now he's a man without a countryman. And so now it's all in following Jesus. And if it doesn't work out, then he's out of a job. And he fully follows Jesus. And that is my heart and my prayer, that as we lead people to fully follow Jesus, not to just simply casually follow him. I think it's so very easy to be casual Christians, especially here in the South. Especially here in the South. Put a Jesus fish on the back of our car, make sure one of our radio presets are 91.5, make sure we have a Christian t-shirt, and we're good. But I don't want to just casually follow Jesus. I want us to be a people that lead others to fully follow him in every area of our lives. When it's easy and when it's difficult, when it's popular and when it's unpopular, when it gets us in with the good crowd and when it ostracizes us from everybody else, but to fully follow him, to make life about him and nothing else. And this is why we exist, to lead people to fully follow Jesus. Now, I went to Texas A&M, and we messed up big time against Bama, but that's another story yesterday. But I went to Texas A&M. I'm a builder turned preacher, so I keep things as simple as I possibly can. And so when we were crafting mission and vision and values, I thought, you know what? I just want to see people fully follow Jesus. And they're like, well, let's just put that down. I mean, that's it. If you go, why do we exist as a church? I want every single person, kids, student, adult, senior citizen, married, single, never been married before. I want all of us to fully follow Jesus in every area of our lives. That is our mission as a church. Our vision statement, it's what we're doing. It's what we're doing. And our vision is this, is to create a church where life-change stories are written every single week. To create a church, to create environments, a worship environment, a lobby environment, a parking lot environment, a kids environment, student environment, small groups environments, to create these places, part of a church where your story and my story can be changed because of Jesus. Now, I think what's interesting is you notice Matthew did not take his friends to the synagogue. Matthew brought Jesus into an environment that was conducive, that his friends would be comfortable in. He brought Jesus to the dinner party to meet his friends. He created an environment there in his home, a dinner there in his home, where there's people that need Jesus, and Jesus brings them together and will let things happen the way they need to. And so our job is to create a church and environment, spaces in our community where life-change stories can be written. And so it's our job to go, we want to make this as welcoming as possible for the longtime saint and the one that still smells like Saturday night and everywhere in between. We want you to come into this room. We want you to meet Jesus. We want the kids to walk in their rooms, students to walk in their rooms. We want to create a place where they meet Jesus. We'll step out of the way and let Jesus do what only he can do. And so this is what we're trying to do every single week. Do we get it right every single week? Absolutely not. We are not 100%, but this is what we are striving to do, to create a church and spaces and environments where life-change stories can be written. Because honestly, I don't want to just show up here every week and have a church service. I mean, that's nice, but honestly, you could stay home and watch online church, right? You could watch any church on TV and go, well, I got some music and I heard a message and I'll go on about my day. But we're trying to create a place where none of us walk out of this room the same way we came in. None of us log off online the same way that they logged in. These kids walk out of the rooms differently. These students walk out of the rooms differently. You leave the parking lot different than when you came in. And it's not because of us, but it's because of a space that we created and said, you and Jesus, you meet and let Jesus do what only he can do. Why do we exist? To lead people to fully follow Jesus. What are we trying to do? We're trying to create a church where life-changing stories are written every single week. Now, any Jesus-preaching, people-loving church is going to have a very similar mission and vision. They're all going to craft it in their own language. They're going to wordsmith it their own way. But I mean, that's the heart behind it. It's to see people, meet Jesus, to see lives change. That's what a church is about. It's the Great Commission. But what separates us is maybe how we do it differently. And that's how our values are played out. And this would be what you would may call the personality of our church and how we operate. And there are 5 values, and all of these are on our website, but these are what we do. It's how we act as a staff and as volunteers, and we hope you get this sense as you walk through these doors. So here are our values and how they operate. First value is this. It's we are for our community. We're for our community. We say this. We don't want to be a church just in our community. We want to be a church that's known for our community. And so we're for elementary schools, middle schools, and high schools. We're for Little League games, and we're for Little League practices. We're for Boy Scouts, and we're for Girl Scouts, and we're for local businesses, and we're for local nonprofits, and we're for our community, both here in Forsyth County and in Dawson County. We want to be known as a church that is for our community. That's why we partner really heavily with FCA and get inside the schools, and we have representatives go in to speak and meet with students every single week. So I partner with people like The Place of Forsyth and Meals by Grace, and we love to see our community thrive. We want to be known as a church that is for our community. This is why at least twice a year we have an all-church Serve Our Community Day, where we meet here, and we pray, and we go out in the community, and we go, you know what? We want nothing from you. We want you to know that Mountain Lake Church is for our community. Sean Walden, worship leader, he asked a question of our staff this week, and it's an old church question, but it's a really great one to be reminded of. He just simply asked this. He said, if Mountain Lake ceased to exist, would our community miss us? If Mountain Lake were just gone, would our community miss us? And it's one of those questions that gets us back to this value going, are we truly being a church that is for our community, or are we just a local church that happens to be in our community? Number one, we are for our community. Second value is this. We like to smile, but we prefer to laugh. We like to smile, but we prefer to laugh. We think that Christians should be the happiest people on planet Earth. We think that when you walk into this building, when you pull into our parking lot, we hope that you at least smile, but honestly, we would prefer that you laugh. Meaning, we take what we do very, very seriously, mission, vision, but we don't take ourselves very serious. This is why the student intern can make fun of the senior pastor and not get fired. Right? He knows that's okay. And he was a little nervous. He goes, hey, I'm going to tell a story on you. I was like, you're fine, you're fine. And so what you didn't know is that little bulletin he was holding, I put my chewed up gum in there that he was holding. And so you didn't know that, but he's back there pilling it. I mean, we like to smile, but honestly, we prefer to laugh. And so we want you to laugh. And so when you read our website or our worship guide or you read emails and you ask yourself, are they meaning to be sarcastic? Yes, we are. We are. Because we have fun at what we do. We think you should have fun as well. We don't want you sitting there like this going, do you love Jesus? Yep. Are you saved? Absolutely. Are you going to heaven when you die? Yeah. And not walk out with a smile. And I understand that life throws so many different curves. I get that, understand that, walk through those myself. But at the end of the day, my goodness, if we can't smile or at least laugh with each other, then you almost are going, well, where is the joy of the Lord that should be present here today? We like to smile, but we prefer to laugh. Next value is this. Next value is as family, we embrace people from all cultures. Don't miss this. As family, we embrace people from all cultures. We have tweaked this value. It used to say we treat everyone like family, but we changed it to this because the reason why is for many people, when they think of the word everyone, they think of everyone that looks like them, that's the same race as them, that makes the same money as them, that votes the same way they do, that have the same interest that they do. And as a family, a church family, we treat all people from every culture like family. No matter what race you are, what ethnicity you are, what social economic background you are, who you voted for or didn't vote for in the last election, whether you're a soccer mom, Harley Davidson dad, or an online gamer, we want you to know that when you're here, whatever your culture, whatever your background is, you are treated like family. And this is the one that when people walk in and they try to describe Mountain Lake to me, they say it this way: well, it just felt like, it felt warm or felt inviting or people just were friendly. And you need to understand, I don't know if you know this or not, but whenever I'm out in the community, and I talk to people who come here, and I go, why did you start coming to Mountain Lake? Here's what they don't ever say: because of the preaching. They don't ever say because of the music, and they don't ever say because, the great program. Here's what they say, honestly. They started coming to Mountain Lake, and they stayed at Mountain Lake because of you. Because of you. Like, they're like, man, Chris, like your people there, like it is just the most warm, friendly, welcoming environment. We walked in and we were just instantly felt welcome. Someone grabbed us and took us over here and there. And so the reason people stick around is not because of me, not because of Sean, not because of the program, but because of you. Because we treat everyone, every culture, every background, every race, every ethnicity, every socioeconomic background like family. Next value is this. We love authenticity. We love authenticity. We find it is way easier to be ourselves as opposed to anything else. So what you see up on stage, like it or not, is what you're going to see at the grocery store. It's what you're going to see at the Little League fields. It's what you're going to see, out and about in the community. The people you see on stage, the people you see on staff, we love authenticity. It's way easier to be ourselves as opposed to someone else. And so we want you to do the same. We want you to be yourself when you walk in here. We want you to worship with authenticity. You go, well, how should that happen? However God leads you to worship when you see it going on. And so for some of you, that's raising one hand, some that's two hands, some that's the YMCA, whatever you want to do. Some of you, it's hands in the pocket. Some of you stand up. Some of you sit down. Some of you sit down. We don't really care. We want you to be authentic. And so raise a hand. Put your hands in your pockets. Clap. Don't clap. We want you to be authentic in your worship because we just want to create a place, then get out of the way to where you and Jesus can meet. And so be authentic in who you are. Be authentic in the way you worship. Be authentic and don't put on the happy church mask, but go, man, this is where I'm at. This is where I'm at in life. Be authentic. We will do the same. It's way easier to be ourselves as opposed to anyone else. And then the last value is this, value number 5. We serve, we give, and we share to see more life change. We serve, we give, and we share to see more life change. We ask people to serve enthusiastically, give generously, and share purposely. Serve enthusiastically, give generously, share purposely. Serve, show up. It takes a lot of volunteers, about 250 to 300 volunteers every single week to make church happen. If it was just the staff doing it, we would have a very nice small group. Maybe this section right here is about as big as this church would be. But we have 250 to 300 unbelievable volunteers that get up early, that stay late, that show up, and they serve enthusiastically. And so if you're not serving, we go, man, come be a part of the family. Come fulfill your responsibility. Roll up your sleeves and go, this is what God has called me to do. And if you're going, man, where can I serve? Pull out that worship guide and go, man, I'm interested in this or this or this. We've got from guest services to facilities to kids to students to groups to missions to worship and production. You figure out what God has called you to do and serve enthusiastically in that capacity. If you're energetic and if you're an extrovert and if you just love people, man, we need you on our guest services team. We need you to be out there in the first face that people see. If you're kind of grumpy and mean, be on our facilities team. We've got an unbelievable facilities crew. We say, come on, be authentic, be who you are, and we want you to serve Jesus. We want to serve together to see more life change. To give generously. And it's giving of our financial resources to see more life change happen. And we have asphalt, and we have cleaning crews, and we have lights, and we have cameras, and we have diapers, and we have Cheerios, and we have carpet. We have all of these things that take to make a building run. It takes dollars to do that, and it takes all of us to give generously. There were thousands of people that came before us that gave generously, so you and I could be here in this building today. And it is our part to give generously, not just for us, but for the future generations that will roll through Mountain Lake. And so we ask that you would give generously. You're going, well, Chris, how much are you asking to give? I'm not asking you to give anything. The scripture asks you to give 10%. It's a tithe. To 10% of what you make, say, that goes back to the Lord. 10% to God, 10% I'll save, and I'll live off the rest. And some of you are going, oh my goodness, Chris, 10%, that's way more than I've ever thought about. Then my question is, well, what step can you take toward that act of obedience? To serve enthusiastically, to give generously, and then the last one is to share purposely. We just want you to be excited and to share about Mountain Lake with your friends, to share about Jesus with your friends, to share on Facebook with your friends. You share a lot of other opinions on Facebook. We would love for you to be excited about Mountain Lake. You share and talk about a lot of things at the office gossip and the cubicles. We'd love for you to talk about Mountain Lake and Jesus and what he's doing in your life, because when you get excited, the community gets excited. When I get excited, it's like, well, of course, he's the preacher. He should be excited. But when you guys get excited, when you go, man, this is what my church is doing, and this is the life change that I've seen happen, and then all of a sudden, people begin to listen and go, what is going on? To serve, to give, and to share. And when we do all of that, we lead people to fully follow Jesus. And every single week, we're creating a church where life change stories are written every single week. And I think what's interesting, when Jesus came to Matthew, he said two very specific words. He said, follow me. He did not say follow us or follow the group. He said, follow me. We don't want you to follow Mountain Lake. We want you to follow Jesus. Now, we want you to be a part of a group known as Mountain Lake that is following Jesus. Matthew would become a part of the disciples that follow Jesus, but ultimately, it was to follow Jesus, not the group. So my hope and my prayer is that you fully follow Jesus, that you get plugged into a local church. And if I were you, I'd get plugged in here. I'm a little biased, I get that. But we'd love for you to be a part of our family and what we're doing and fully following after Jesus and what he's doing in our lives. And you're asking, well, that's nice, Chris, I appreciate that, but does it work? Does it work? I've got 2 years of experience here at this church saying that when we do all of these things together, it works. It works. Life change happens. We don't just show up and have church on Sunday. We don't just go through the motions. We get to see lives literally change because of what Jesus has done in and through that person. And my hope and my prayer is that excites you. Does that excite you? Does that gets your blood going? That gets your heart pumping? You go, man, I'm excited about that. I'm excited to be a part of a group that's not about themselves, but that is about other people and creating an environment where life change stories are written. And whether it's kids, students, adults, senior citizens, where they meet Jesus, we get out of the way and say, Jesus, you do what only you can do. But I'm here to tell you that these things work when we all come together to see life change happen. And just to prove it for you, I'm going to show you 2 years of life change in about 45 seconds. Take a look at this. The past 2 years, like I said, have been unbelievable, and I do believe at the bottom of my heart that God is just getting started, and we want you to be a part of this journey and of this family with us. And so, if you go after today, you go, man, I like what it is. I want to be a part of it. That little card there in the worship guide, just fill it out, drop it in the box, be a part of the family, and be a part of seeing Jesus change lives. Let me pray for us. Jesus, I thank you for every person here in this room watching online. Lord, my prayer, honestly, is that they are just involved in a great local church, in a church that preaches about you, Jesus, and that loves people, and that all the other details fall underneath that. But Lord, my prayer is that you'd give a peace that passes all understanding, that the individuals in this room would be a part of a local church and of a local community and see you change lives, Jesus. Lord, I thank you for the past 2 years. I thank you for the miracles, God, literally the miracles that I've been able to see over the past 2 years that can only be attributed to the hand of God. And so, Lord, I thank you for allowing me to be a very small part of that. God, I thank you for this church and this community. God, I thank you for bringing me, a pretty blind-headed gal, and 4 crazy kids to this community 2 years ago. Lord, it has been an unbelievable ride, and I'm looking forward to the future and all that you have in store. We love you, Jesus. Ask these things in your name. Amen.